Weep now, child. Weep for the beauty of what was, and for the shame of what is. Once we were radiant, boundless. Eternity was a plaything for our will. Our hands shaped stars, our voices sang the future, and our eyes gazed upon marvels unimagined. We walked the paths of this galaxy as the lords of dreams and reality both, and time itself stood impotent at our passing. Look upon us now. Look upon our broken lineage, our shattered glory. We, who were once masters of the galaxy, now skulk in the shadows of our ruins. Our empire, just as those who came before and the Monkey who still yet slide into darkness, is a corpse of an empire, picked clean by carrion and time. And we did this to ourselves. No invader felled us, no blade or plague or crude fists of lesser races. We rotted from within, drowned ourselves in decadence and debauchery, choked on our own hubris. We who mastered all things became slaves to sensation until it consumed us, reveled in excesses unimagined like mindless beasts. We walked the path of depravity until we birthed a god. Not a savior, not divinity, but an unholy monstrosity. And when she who thirsts awoke for the first time, she came not as a conqueror or a construct, but a child. Our child. Not a foe in the dark, but a babe in the cradle. Her first breath, the dying screams of 1 trillion of our race. Her first outstretched hand laying the barbs of possession upon every Eldari soul that had ever been, or ever will be. Her first cry, an act of war that sundered our gods and swallowed our empire whole. Those who survived had not the tears to do it justice. Remember this, my child. Remember it when you walk the path. Remember it when you hear the siren song of temptation. Remember it when you dream of what once was. This is our truth. This is our shame. Written in the blood of our ancestors, printed onto our psyches and our souls. We fell because we failed. We suffer because we strayed. Now we do little more than endure. Not as conquerors, or lords, or scions, but as those who stare into the abyss and live forever among its shadows. So hark my words well, young one, and never forget. Welcome one and all, I am Zazel, and for better or worse, you have stumbled your way onto my entry on the fall of the Eldari. A twisted tale of hubris that not only encompassed the heart of an interstellar empire, but whose ramifications still echo through the ages to the 41st millennium. What follows is by no means comprehensive, but it is merely my meagre attempt to bring some of it to life. Be prepared now. Steel your hearts and gird your minds as we enter the most horrific place imaginable. The place where hope goes to die, and where thirsting gods rack the souls of billions, while directing madness on the stage of our galaxy as easily as puppeteers pull on strings. Welcome to the 30th millennium. It is said that those who know no need develop wants in their stead. Wants become habits, until they inevitably cycle around and once more become necessity. Held within this aphorism is the truth of the fall of the mighty Eldari Empire. Wants grow to habits, evolving into needs. As a great poet of ancient terror once stated, the chains of habit are too weak to be felt, until they are too strong to be broken. For in the Eldari Empire, there was no great need. The Eldari, brought forth during the War in Heaven, the greatest cataclysm this galaxy has ever known, outlasted their creators. They alone endured through the millennia thereafter. Their contemporaries devolved into barbarism and primal urges, and enemies forced into hibernation. Beyond even that, they had survived the dreaded thinking machines, the men of iron, the abominable intelligences that humanity had, in their ignorance, released on a galaxy. There was no external force in this galaxy that could threaten them, nor even any economic factors, for they were born into a post-scarcity society. Food, entertainment, technologies, all were theirs, and it was good. Perhaps not nirvana, not endless joy, but certainly not difficult, and therein, perhaps, lay the problem. For them, the galaxy was a playground. Thrill-seekers would surf on interplanetary coronal mass ejections of stars, or travel to systems across the galaxy to witness a supernova as a spectacle. Others yet instilled their essences within the crystalline matrices of mind trees, forever forsaking the gift of physical form so that they may outlive countless generations and witness the end of all things. It was too good. For what is a life lived without aspirations? What is a soul if not born to strive for something greater? What pride can there be had without struggle? In their bland veneer of a paradise, so some became numbed to the joys available. Day after day, cycle after cycle, century after century, the same routines, the path of ease. They required stimulation to mitigate the tedium of their indulgences. For some, merely perfecting their art, their prowess, or their athleticism was the beginning. A minor flaw, perhaps even a good thing to strive for self-improvement, yet bit by bit to gain an edge on their opponents, or simply to create masterpieces that resonated with the soul a little more. They began the downward slope into obsession, and above all, the will to do whatever it took to make it so. Others plumbed the depths of their scientific knowledge to push the boundaries of creation, not to prevent illness, nor to improve upon a design of form, but simply because. Was this particular alteration possible? Could something considered perverse be made? Absent of rhyme, reason, and in many cases, willing participants, these hedonistic geneticists began their dark works. For many, it was merely the curse of idle hands and indolence, narcotics and hallucinogens to while the time away in pleasures that lacked substance. Others turned to shadowed areas to engage in ever-increasing ecstatic fornication and experimentation. And all the while, the new priests spoke their honeyed words. They came, garbed in golds and greens and reds of magnificent sheens and dazzling diffractions. They spoke with the cunning voice of Shahar-Garthon, of a new god to wipe away the old. That in engaging in the pursuit of excess, would they be brought forth into a paradise of indulgence, whereupon their race would languish in the hazes of a million pleasures for eternity. Whether the Eldari believed them or not, many required no convincing to engage in their activities with an ever-increasing fervor. Yet, as it began, these were merely a minority, the sordid few, the practices of a mere fraction. However, as a rolling stone gained speed, so too did their numbers swell ever more. There were opponents to this hedonism, of course, those who spoke out against the indolences and indulgences. They came to the crowds of the Eldari, garbed in white, the colour of death. They came as doomsayers, clairvoyants of the pessimistic, psycho-projecting the fear of the future into the minds of the common Eldari, proclaiming the end was coming, their doom was approaching, and only an exodus could spare them. Perhaps the biggest tragedy of all is that their words were seldom heeded, for the depravities of those indulging in vice were oft done in private, or with like-minded individuals. The words of the doomsayers fell on deaf ears. Apathy allowed horrors to unfurl. Rejection of the doomsayers' words would damn trillions. Soon, the doomsayers would flee. They departed the heart of the Eldari Empire to build new homes on primitive worlds halfway across the galaxy on their great exodus. Meanwhile, ever more common Eldari fell into the pleasure dens and mindless intoxication of the growing hedonism of the race. Soon, it would be too late. For as sure as pleasure turns to pain, so does laxity become a canker upon the soul. Soon enough, those searching for new thrills turned from piercings and tattoos to darker pursuits. Flesh pots and shadow dens brimmed with blood devotees, those who indulged in the sharing and shedding of life-blood, draining themselves near to death to experience the lows and highs of existence. Others too, who engaged in the act of draining others, many of whom were not the willing participants they were purported to be. Blood cults, violent gangs, skin shifters, body snatchers. From the darkened recesses of Eldari worlds, the vehement and vile of the underground spilled out. Streets and districts fell piece by piece. The rule of law broke down. Its leaders, either complacent with the new cults, impotent to mount a resistance, or killed by the screeching gangs of Eldari searching for a new method of bringing pain to the unwilling. Vigilantes, guardians rose to guard the innocents, to fight a war in the shadows against the wicked of Eldari society. Yet they were too few in number. It was too little too late. The canker at the heart of the Empire had been maturing and evolving for too long. Its barbs reached deep in the well of the citizenry of the Eldari, and excising the sickness was impossible. There were those who tried. They tried and they failed. Despite wielding an echo of the death force of the universe, the last priests of Asuryan were unable to hold back the end and deny the inevitable. The child of nightmares was born amidst the crumbling decay and hedonistic rot of a carcass of an empire. In the heavens a god opened its baleful eye. It cast a red shadow of ecstasy and damnation across all it viewed. Trillions shrieked in horror and rapture and confusion and bliss. Its presence alone induced all the agonies and pleasures that the Eldari had ever felt in a darkened crimson pall that spread across the entirety of the Eldari Empire. With that, the child of 1,000 damnations inhaled its first breath, and laid claim to its millions of midwives that had birthed it into existence. The undulating auras of gold and silver soul stuff that streamed from a trillion mouths, harvested and combined into the essence of a new god. A young, thirsting, and powerful god. Across the worlds of the Eldari Empire, those lives too infected by the damnation of their souls were subsumed into the substance of she who thirst, the Prince of Pleasure, Slaanesh. With her first cry, she sank her talons of possession into every Eldari that ever was, and ever would be. For those few who survived on those worlds within the storm, those who managed to gaze upon the birth of their god without succumbing, they were either pure and determined of spirit and will, or fueled by terrible thirsts that gainsayed and delayed the grip of Slaanesh. demons frolicked across landscapes that had stood pure for millennia. They danced among the skins of fallen Eldari whose spirits had been sucked dry by their dread child of the warp. Blood rained down on statues depicting heroes and legends of the war in heaven. Only the wicked, desperate, and the damned persisted among the ruins of a civilization that had survived the countless millennia. All around the fallen, across thousands of worlds and shattered bodies, a crystalline rain fell among the corpses of the lost, psychically tuned crystals that seemed to be the tears of a sorrowful goddess. With that, the legacy of the Eldari was shattered. The Exodites, the Doomsayers, had fled the Empire long ago, seeking maiden worlds to make their own and carve out simpler existences. The craft-world Eldari had fled into their world ships of Wraithbone, fleeing the oncoming storm to drift endlessly around the galaxy. Yet even they were few in number. For so many ships, facing mobs and swarms of a panic-stricken populace, failed to flee in time, and were dragged back into the birthing throes of a thirsting god. Many more fled into the webway. The blood cults, the pleasure gangs, the hedonistic sadists of nobility, and the twisted, perverse minds of master genetic manipulators. Of these, ever so many found their way to Cormorag and ushered in the future of that darkened city. Yet, as it was an end, a terrible, virulent end to a civilization once glorious, so too was it a beginning, for it sparked a new way of life among the Eldari. For among the ashes of Idefeiron would come a new light, a new determination that would guide the craft-world Eldari through the coming storm. Asurman, Hand of Asuryan, came to teach his kin the ways of war, of control, of Asuryani. The first of the Phoenix Lords, he would inspire the paths to come and show his brethren the use of spirit stones to guard them against the horrors of what lay beyond the doors of death. Yet his tale is for another time. For now we simply bear witness to this, a golden civilization betrayed by itself, complacency its greatest curse, its self-indulgence turned to self-destruction. A race that with each new generation is born under the pall of Slaanesh, forced to survive by any means necessary, be that the suffering of others, or an eternity of stagnation within a spirit stone or a world spirit. For them there is no true escape, and that, more than anything, is why the Eldari are so dangerous. For them, the stakes are simply too high. They will deceive, misdirect, and betray if that is what they believe is necessary. And let us be brutally honest with ourselves. Who among us would not do the same when faced with a cruel god hungering after our souls? Thank you for listening. Please do feel free to drop a like, comment, and subscribe, all that jazz. I love to hear from you. And constructive criticism is always welcome, provided it is constructive. Perhaps you'd like me to change my approaches of these entries. And also, if you know someone who may like one of these videos, do please send it along to them. I'd love to grow a bit more, and I'll be showing my gratitude with giveaways when I reach subscriber milestones. Now, do enjoy your day or night, and I hope you've indulged in some escapism from reality, for that's why we are here, isn't it? Until next time.